This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our council workshop for June 20th at 6 p.m. This meeting is being held in a hybrid fashion. That means members of the council, the public, and staff can participate in the meeting either virtually or in person. And I'm just going to check with staff. We don't have the overhead screens on yet. Are they? That's all going to be replicated on these side screens anyway, correct? We're sorting that out. There we go. Okay. So members of the public, staff, and council can participate in the meeting virtually or in person. To that end, we have Councillor Forbes has expressed her regrets for this meeting, but all other members of council are participating. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will somebody vote?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Muri. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Back. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, we have the minutes from a previous council workshop of April 19th. Are there any errors or omissions from those minutes as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move adoption? Moved by Councillor Muri, seconded by Councillor Hanson. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries and the minutes are now adopted. And moving on to the main business this evening, we have pleasure of welcoming the North Vancouver District Public Library Board to come and give a presentation report on their activities. And it's a great pleasure to have you here. I used to be on the board and had a great time working together to try to make sure the commitment I always say in public on these matters, Jacqueline, is that our community is committed to a low barrier access to high quality public services in our community. And there's no better access point than our libraries, making people feel welcome, making people have access to be lifelong learners in our community. And I know you're probably going to mention it here tonight, but it was so great to open up the new kiosk down in the Lionsgate Recreation Center or Community Center this last week. And to see that space already being used by the neighbors, it's very exciting to see that partnership between Library Rec, Capilano Community Services, and all other agencies. It's going to be a great gift to the community. Tonight we have with us presenting, we have James Mitchell and Valerie Dong from the board are coming in to start the presentation, and we also have Jacqueline Van Dyke here from the Executive Director of North Vancouver District Public Library, and looking very much towards your presentation. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you tonight. Before we get started, we want to acknowledge that our libraries are located on the traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam First Nations. Their ancestors have lived here for countless generations, and we are grateful for the opportunity to connect communities, share knowledge, and inspire stories on these unceded Coast Salish territories. My name is James Mitchell. I've been a trustee since 2018.
Hello, I'm Valerie Dong, and I've been a trustee, I believe, since 2018 as well. It's very lovely to be here. Thank you.
Some time has passed since we were last able to meet with you, and a lot has changed. So we are thrilled to be here with you tonight representing the 2022 Library Board. We are here this evening on behalf of the Library Board, first and foremost, to thank this council for its ongoing support of the library, to share an update on where we are at as an organization, and to open the door so that if you have any questions or concerns, you can feel comfortable sharing them with us at any time.
So when I look up at council, I think I see 4 of you who have participated on the library board in one point or another. So I'm guessing that means you are all experts on all things library, which is fantastic because I'm going to start with a quiz. Just kidding. So there you go.
I'm pretty good at library trivia. We've had those competitions at Christmas, and I've got a good record, but yeah.
So we'll begin with some background information, some of which you may already be familiar with. So North Vancouver Public District Library has 3 full-service locations, Lynn Valley, Parkgate, and Capilano, in addition to the recently opened NVDPL Express Library at the Lionsgate Community Recreation Center. And as part of the community for 58 years, NVDPL libraries are an essential community hub of all ages, stages, interests, interests, and backgrounds. The library's 2021 budget was about $7 million. Most of the funding is provided by the district, with additional contributions of around $220,000 in annual operating grants from the province of BC and about $15,000 from the Friends of the Library, who fund special projects like Summer Reading Club and the North Shore Writers Festival. We have approximately 40,000 library cardholders who borrow collectively around 1 million items a year. And as you can see from the statistics shown here, like many organizations, we are inching forward on an upward trend as we continue to recover from the pandemic. While attendance and visits took slight dips, we're proud that circulation remained somewhat steady. You can see the accelerated growth in popularity of digital resources in 2020 was sustained over last year.
Libraries are important cornerstones of a healthy community. Our libraries inspire learning, discovery, creativity, and collaboration of the district by fulfilling our mission to connect community, offering vibrant and accessible spaces, share knowledge, providing free access to high-quality content, and pairing residents with the information programs or people they need, inspire stories, innovating our services, and acting as a catalyst to inspire our community of creators. Libraries give people the opportunity to find jobs, explore research, experience new ideas, get lost in wonderful stories, while at the same time providing a sense of place and belonging. The last 2 years have impacted and challenged our communities in ways that were out of our realm of comprehension when we first launched our strategic plan. Just like so many other organizations, the onset of the pandemic and its continual evolution was a tremendous hurdle to navigate. And in 2021, the tragic events that unfolded in our Lynn Valley community were devastating. And library staff were committed and invested in the days, weeks, and months that followed to support the healing journeys of staff and community. As a board, we remain incredibly proud of how the library and its staff have shown incredible resilience to deliver services when faced with fear and uncertainty. Despite these challenges, while some advancements on the strategic plan were delayed, some were accelerated, and the library has made great progress in achieving our goals. Some of the achievements we're proud of include.
Okay, so we'll start with the Connect achievements. So we adapted service hours in response to community use and feedback, year-round opening on Sundays. We reduced barriers to accessing library services and collections by eliminating overdue fines. We're grateful to District Council and staff for making this a priority at a crucial time for our community. We're reaffirming our commitment to addressing inequality and social disparity. We've established a framework to help us better support diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in our library, both staff and community. We've developed a land acknowledgement statement. We're focused on building good relations with local Indigenous people and continue efforts to decolonize and indigenize library collections and spaces. And we've hosted public and staff workshops to support reconciliation and anti-racism. We've developed a roadmap to expand accessible services created. This included working with partners to continue serving homebound patrons and long-term care residents during the pandemic. And some of the achievements we made during the height of the pandemic include establishing NVDPL from home, invested in digital resources and content, shifted to virtual programming, and engaged in window librarianship. Helped launch Connect North Shore with North Shore Emergency Management, all North Shore municipalities and North Shore libraries. We partnered with North Shore Libraries and TELUS for the Take Home Technology Project to support community members who were without access to technology or Wi-Fi, working through local community agencies to reach out to those most in need. Partnered with the District of North Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services to provide staff training regarding infection control and proper PPE and virtual story time for kids. We remain committed to working in partnership with the great network of organizations we have in North Vancouver.
We work to reimagine and enhance our spaces. Capilano Teen Area renovated, Parkgate renovations begun, Story Lab open to the public, and post March 27th, new Lynn Valley Library entry doors installed for safety reasons. Refresh of the Lynn Valley Library Children's Department is underway, mostly funded by donations. We're offering collections and programming that unite our community in shared learning. Collections invested in and promoted and supported learning how to access digital resources, particularly ebooks. Launched library takeout and personal picks, a new service focused on librarian recommended materials, which was so popular during the pandemic. And more recently, Caring Community Kits, which are backpacks with curated collections and materials to show interpersonal connections, build community understanding and resiliency.
Have some
Okay.
here. So this one is a Caring Community Kit for families learning about the environment. Is Caring Community Kit for adults, conversation starters. Caring Community Kit for families learning about the impact of residential.
We offered innovative programming to connect with our community virtually. Over 21,000 attendees attended virtual programs in 2020 and 2021. In terms of teen services, the pandemic took its toll on everyone, but a particularly vulnerable population that were most impacted were teens. And we took extra efforts to provide supports to this group. Attendance for teen programs in 2021 was 176% over what it was in 2019. Over the past 6 years, the library has invested in the growth of our teen services department, and we have seen tremendous engagement with youth at the library. Today's youth are passionate and they want to make an impact on the world. We know that by engaging teens, we can help them thrive and we can create lifelong library users.
Okay, so under Inspire Achievements, acted as a catalyst to inspire a community of creators. Hosted the NBDPL first ever digital storyteller in residence program, creating a video to highlight the diverse stories and voices of our community for Canada 150. Currently working with the District of North Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services on a series of promotional videos that promote safety and responsible trail and park use. Inspired our community by offering community-focused, non-traditional collections, puzzle library, borrow a device e-readers, Dungeon and Dragon kits, Caring Community Resource kits. And won 5 awards in the past 2 years. The BCLA Building Better Communities Award for the Take Home Technology Initiative, BCLA Community Story Award, the joint offering of a virtual summer reading club, BCLA Building Better Communities Award for the innovative discussion-based programs at Parkgate Library, and 2 American Library Association Public Relations Awards. Thank you. We are very proud of how our library has responded, adapted, innovated, and continued to provide library service in difficult circumstances over the last 2 years. We're in a solid place at the halfway mark, though there's still more to do. We're responding to our community's needs and renewing our focus in some areas in particular to address diversity, equity, inclusion, and reconciliation work, as well as support our community as restrictions from the pandemic begin to ease. So some of the projects and initiatives that you can look forward to include further interior space enhancements. And one project in particular is working at Parkgate to create a new team space in collaboration with local youth and indigenize the Lantern Reading Room in collaboration with the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Work on expanding the impact, value, and reach of accessible services, which deliver library services to those with perceptual disabilities, mobility challenges, or are in care. Continue to work on thoughtful collaborations and partnerships with local organizations that help us all reach shared goals and meet the needs of our community. Further identify and address gaps in our services, programs, facilities, and collections related to diversity, equity, and inclusion work to be more welcoming of our community. Work in service to the North Shore News to digitize back issues of the paper so that our community has free digital access to archives of our community stories. And build capacity for digital skills and creation by leveraging the expertise and facility Storylab.
Now that we've shared some of our achievements and some of the initiatives we are currently working on, we also wanted to take a moment this evening to let you know the current context that we are operating in. The COVID-19 pandemic has shifted the world in many ways, and our libraries are no exception. Throughout the pandemic, we've seen just how important public libraries are within the community. We say often that libraries are a great equalizer and operate as a third space. We provide open access to information, spaces, technology, and tools, all on an even playing field. We found during the height of the pandemic that many residents with the freedom, opportunity, and privileges to access information and entertainment resources from home were accessing resources from a distance. For those without these privileges and for many vulnerable populations, the library was one of the few open community spaces that provided consistent access to shelter and clean water, technology, Wi-Fi, and resources they need to maintain their mental health. This was evidenced by many people who were visiting the pandemic and are visiting our physical spaces today. Our library staff have endured many challenges supporting all members of our community throughout these difficult times as best they can with the current resources that are available. As freely accessible public service centers, libraries and library staff are bridging social service gaps. While not unique to us here in the District of North Vancouver, or even at a library, we have seen, like many public service organizations, an increase in concerning interactions between patrons and public serving staff. Our libraries are also acting as emergency refuge centers during periods of extreme weather, which is an evolving and growing role for us. We are proud of the strides we've made, but as we continue to move forward on strategic initiatives outlined in our strategic plan, we want to make sure you're aware of the current operating realities that we and perhaps other public serving organizations are being faced with at the moment. The health and well-being of our community is our number one priority, and supporting staff morale, well-being, and mental health and continuing to build our organizational culture will be something we continue to pay close attention to this year.
All right, so an expanded vision for NVDPL. So now that we've illustrated some of our achievements and what circumstances we're operating, we wanted to take a moment to talk about an expanded vision for library service. In general, public libraries are built around a service model for freely sharing resources with community members, but they are moving well beyond books. We're also about people, spaces, and connection. And we're about adapting what it means to share resources. Yes, we offer books, films, digital resources, but our staff are experts at curating relevant and meaningful collections, as we've shared tonight. We also offer puzzles, Dungeons & Dragons starter kits, radon detector kits, caring community kits, learning resources, and much more. The idea of the sharing economy is emerging as essential to sustainable living, and share culture promotes community connections while combating isolation. And the collection of things you can borrow at our library continues to evolve. And we feel that applying a new future-focused lens to our existing model of library service will allow for a more progressive approach to lending items of need to residents. We feel that new developments in our community may be opportunities to continue to expand traditional library service through amenities that provide access to unique, scarce, and infrequently required resources for personal consumers that will help promote the sharing economy. We have developed an expanded vision for library services. You could perhaps consider a discussion paper that, with district and community support, could result in an NVDPL presence in a mixed-use facility that elevates the use of three components: traditional library services, collaborative makerspace, and library of things, all of which we are well positioned to undertake. Upcoming District of North Vancouver approved development areas provide excellent potential for this type of new NVDPL presence to further push the boundary of traditional library service in our community, as well as service to our collective goals around environmental sustainability and community resilience. We would be keen to hear your thoughts on such a proposal.
We recognize that this is a lot of information for one evening, and we're so grateful for your time. As our library system continues to work to implement its strategic plan for 2020 to 2023, we will work to ensure that our priorities continue to align with both local and provincial goals to better support our communities. We are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and also thank you very much for stepping in. I know that Chair Laura Gregorick expressed her regrets, and Vice Chair Colby Mann is busy with the graduation season at schools, and so thank you, James and Valerie, for stepping up and covering. You made a joke about doing a quiz, and I'm kind of wondering whether I should quiz you as a former library guy on the mission statement. It always shows up at our Christmas party. I won't put you on the spot on it, but needless to say, we all appreciate you connecting community, sharing knowledge, and inspiring stories in your community, in your mission with the library services. I do want to pass the floor over to our current council chair or council liaison on the library board. So Councillor Curran, can you hear me?
I sure can. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
First of all, I'm so sad that I'm not there because all of you are there. So I'm sending you a big virtual hug. COVID, maybe fist bump. Thank you so much for that presentation. Very great presentation, and also just thank you, to the board. It's been such a privilege and joy to get to meet everyone on the board. These are community volunteers that are so passionate and dedicated. So thank you so much for everything you bring. And then to the staff, it's hard to even I think resilience has many layers but just my thanks for everything that you have been through, or my thanks for your leadership through everything, Jacqueline. And to everyone. I mean, it has been a really, really challenging time in so many ways. And I'm always just really moved by your humanity, the way that you approach this work and the connection and the commitment to just that continued learning and stories and sharing. So thank you so much. So I'll start with a huge thanks to all of the work that you do. And also for the leadership in so many ways. Like there's so many things that I think the library leads on that we can learn from, and it's really inspiring. I get really excited about the 21st century vision. That's something that I think there's so much potential for that continued model of sharing and learning and unlearning and relearning, and the library is so well suited to that. I think we talked about at the first time you presented years ago, I was like, this is the original share economy. And if you tried to pitch a library today, people would be like, wait, there's going to be a space where people are going to share things and they're going to bring them back. And like, people probably couldn't conceptualize what a beautiful thing that a library is. So thank you for that. Some of the things that stood out for me is that connection. We know with the social piece that you talked about, we're in a mental health crisis. The library really is a way that people connect. There's also the really incredible work that the library does to connect seniors who can't come into the facility. And I think that connection, we're learning more and more, is really what that can actually be the difference between someone living, is that connection and someone saying, how are you? And making sure that they're seen. So thank you for that. And the work around decolonization and indigenizing the collection has been so important. And I've been really lucky to be involved in a little bit of the work. And I think I see out there, it's hard to see who's in there, but I think, is that Eunice out there? Yay, hi. So just so much passion and heart-led work on that. That really is so important. And I'm really excited to see Parkgate evolve. And I love the way that that's being led and worked with such care and humility and commitment. So thank you for that. And I just have reflected on comments that I hear from people who have been marginalized historically, or people who don't feel like society sees them, and how important that is when they go into the space to be seen. And I see that, and it really is touching. So it's changing people's lives. It's about that connection. And I'm really happy to be part of it. It's honestly like, I just love it. You're never going to get rid of me. And also I stick to my fines are dead. Like they're never coming back. I will fight against those for all time. So I'll leave it to my colleagues, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor, for being so invested in your committee role. We do appreciate that. And Councillor Kern's been serving as our liaison for the last 2 years, and before that, we had Councillor Beck. Councillor Beck, you have your hand up, do you have some comments?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just feel so much pride just listening to your presentation. There's just so much in there. And yes, I'm one of the lucky ones around this table that got to serve on the library board as well. And it's great to see all of you. And thank you very much for the presentation here tonight. I agree with everything that Councillor Curran said, and I want to echo just my appreciation as well, just for the way you have come together, especially over the last almost 3 years with the pandemic, with the tragedy that you had to deal with in Lynn Valley. The library team has really just stepped up to the plate in so many ways. So we all recognize that, and I just want to express my thanks for everything that you've done. You know, you say libraries are well beyond books, and that is just so true. There's so much that you do for the community, and I agree with Councillor Curran that the social connection piece is probably one of the key things right now as we look with, you know, all of the things that we're dealing with in the world, not just the pandemic, but climate change and being able to keep people, you know, feeling like they're connected to their community is just so important, and you play a big part in that. Yeah, I'm one of your biggest ambassadors now in the community. I mean, especially now that I have 2 kids, my perspective on libraries has changed. We spend a lot of time there. And just want to touch on some of the ideas that you brought forward and around looking at mixed use spaces and where we can create more you know, library presence in some of the different areas. I totally support that. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it down to the opening of the new mobile library, but in Lionsgate, but I was at the FCM convention that weekend, but I'm really proud of that space as well. So yeah, just a big thanks for everything that you're doing, continue to do, and continue to lead the way in so many areas. The district's proud of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you to my 2 council colleagues for their comments, and James and Valerie for being here, and Jacqueline, of course, as well. I also sat on the library board for the totality, I believe, of the 2014 to 2018 term. And my question is going to be about COVID. And you talked about how you operated during COVID, and of course, the very important role that you played and the social supports you provided. And then you talked about your reopening now effectively moving away from the COVID restrictions. But COVID's had different influences on different areas of business and sectors, and has left a lot of permanent impacts in different places. So I'd be curious to hear your reflections on the way in which COVID perhaps has influenced library services, and the way coming out of COVID, if you think there will be sort of longer term impacts from COVID, and how library services perhaps are going to have been changed by that experience. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think Jacqueline would be best to answer that.
Well, I'm here. It's had a huge impact, Jim. Sorry, Councillor Hanson, and it's also it really accelerated some of the changes we've been making, particularly around our staffing models and how we interact with people. It's I don't know where to begin, or it's a very long conversation if I were to answer that really thoroughly. But here's a little. It's just changed who's in the library, how people are using the library, interactions with patrons, that whole sense of safety and security and healthcare, and it's you know, I think that we were staffed in a different time, and now we're changing how we staff and how we operate, and we've accelerated a lot of change, and we've got some ways to go to feel like we're really equipped to handle situations like this again in the future.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Stewart, you had additional comments?
Yes, Your Worship. I can admit to be a bit of a curmudgeon sometimes as a steward of tax dollars. how we spend our money, but I will say that there was a point where libraries, rec, and museums were all competing to be the community hub. And I said, my goodness, how can we have so many community hubs? And I've come to the conclusion that we need all these community hubs. In a time of isolation, in a time of challenge and change, all these community hubs are really important. So I just wanted to express that, my appreciation for really all of those organizations in this time of isolation that have really stepped forward. And as we're struggling with heat domes, the library again has stepped forward as being an opportunity. So I just want to recognize all the great work that's being done and continues to be done in our partner agencies.
Mr. Stewart, Councillor Murray, your comments.
Thank you. I pressed the wrong button. Thank you for your presentation. I have lines in between you because I'm in this box. And I can hear myself on this iPad because I have feedback.
We'll address that, but you need to turn the volume off.
I did.
Okay,
It's off. So I'm going to endeavor to try to see you and speak. Thank you. So you're doing an awesome job, clearly, from the accolades around the table. I think Councillor Bond and I are the only two that haven't yet to sit on the library board. We'll work towards that. I'm interested in the connection part of your presentation. And given that COVID was a more difficult challenge, obviously, when we couldn't see each other, but we connected in all sorts of new and different ways. And you talked about connecting with Naseem, the North Shore Emergency Management Office. And I'm wondering if you could just elaborate on that. And I'm most interested in understanding if there is a way for us to build through Naseem. I was the previous chair of the North Shore Emergency Management Committee, and I sit as a member for council. But I'm wondering if there's a way for us to look at an improved opportunity to reach out to people in the community to make sure that they're more prepared, but also to seek opportunities of volunteerism. We're having a very big challenge across the board, and certainly all municipalities are having that challenge, where once the North Shore had one of the highest volunteer rates in Canada. Now everybody's very busy, life is very different, and there's so many more things to take part in. And sometimes those volunteer positions are, lacking. I also chair the Advisory Oversight Committee for Council, which is in charge of making recommendations to council on appointments to committees. And it is sometimes challenging when you don't have enough to even fill current positions. So if there's any way that the library can assist us in that, given your 40,000 borrowers and the kind of, circulation of people that you have coming in, I just maybe like some comment on that, if you could.
You want to, Jacqueline?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I think there's a lot of scope for working together on public education efforts to help communities be more resilient. We're definitely talking to NSEAM, and there's about a number of things actually, but that is one of them as well. And also with the Climate Action Committee, I think there's a number of areas where we can really support the community and learning how they can take their own responsibility for pieces of it and learn a whole lot more. I'm sorry, I'm not being particularly articulate here, but I think there's a lot of scope for community education and learning together.
Yeah, it's just if there was a really easy, simple way for people to be able to come in and see an opportunity to volunteer or to become more prepared in regards to emergency management, that would be a great thing. Yeah. If we could draw, the public's attention to it and know that we are looking for volunteers. My second question would be, and we talk about our First Nations and Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh coming forward and opening events such as when we open Lions Gate. a couple of weeks ago. That was great. And it was a prayer and a blessing and song, which is quite traditional in openings. But there was also sort of an extended opportunity for the nations to be able to present more song and more of their cultural position. And I can't help but wonder when I'm listening, there's always a bit of an interpretation afterwards in regards to the prayer. You know, the nation will say, oh, I just said on behalf of my, you know, my family or my elders. And I'm wondering if we could make that something that's part of the library in regards to the translation of those prayers, just to be able to have them written down so we could understand more of what they're meaning and their back history. It might be something of interest for the community, because often it's, you know, I don't speak the language, and they're quite, you know, intricate, and it would be nice to be able to understand those prayers going forward. So that's a thought. And then my last comment would be, you talked about the North Shore News back editions and how you would like to provide those for, really hate this right here. I just want to point this part out right here. I feel like I'm in, yeah. The North Shore News back info, but I will let you know, and Mr. Stewart knows how to get into this, but we have an extreme amount of back reports and history within our D&D archives. And our website is no longer used where you would search a report or possibly a word, or say if we searched Mayor Don Bell, for instance, in our current website, he would not come up. Whereas, and you are surprised as the chief librarian. Yes, it's shocking, I know. He was the mayor for a very long time. And I know you're going to be running Google. Somebody's going to Google you in 20 years and you're not going to pop up. But maybe if the library was able to take some of that historical work and those historical reports and maybe offer it like the backstories of the North Shore News, there would be a place for people to come and, you know, look at some of those historical documents, because there's a lot of information. You know, I have to reflect on my work, and that was GUARD, Group United Around Responsible Development, and there were a number of reports over the years that were brought forward to District Council. You know, the issue around the Berkeley landslide, for instance, you know, how we look at land use and transportation and the history of the municipality. And we do have those links within our system. No one knows how to actually activate them. I think Mr. Stewart does, wherever he is. But it would be great if somehow we could put those into the library so people could utilize those reports from one of our library centers.
Yeah, I've often thought on the North Shore, it'd be really useful to have a digital repository for all kinds of things, the newspapers and different archives. It'd be multi-partners,
right?
Something like that, and certainly archives has a big role there too.
Okay, yeah. Good. Let's work on that with Mr. Stewart. Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. I can move receipt of the presentation if you want a motion.
Yes, so you can start that process. You can.
I'll move that.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a seconder on the matter? Okay, we'll get to the vote on that in a minute, but sounds like you have another candidate for the board at some point. Councillor Murray's got lots of ideas for the board. That's great. Mr. Stewart, you had a comment?
Well, since my name was evoked so many times, I think that's.
I have to make sure you're there.
I think it's a great idea of combining municipal archives with municipal archives. And when I say that, we have administrative archives, and they're always separate from municipal archives. And I think what you're talking about is something that's I've been very passionate about for a long time, which is to say, how do we make sure that the community has access to what's happening at the municipal government level? So I would love to talk to you about that more. Love to talk with Jacqueline about that more, about how we can move municipal archives, and the clerk will have a heart attack here. How we move municipal archives into a general archive that's accessible for the general public. So we'll definitely pursue that in the next couple of months.
When he says that, he means he's going to fund it. So it's a good project. Okay, good. We've got that on tape. Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you very much. And I think we raised this a couple of times when I was on the library board, this issue of too many of the stories of our community we're leaving to outside organizations to record them and to hold on to the copy. And it's going to take a concerted effort and partnership between the archives and library and other services to make sure that we record important community events. When we have a big event in Lynn Valley Town Center, who's recording it? Who's putting it into our archives? Are we relying on the North Shore News in case they send somebody, or are we relying on someone to upload it to YouTube? I think it's something that we have to be more intentional about creating that repository of community events, and that'll have to happen through a partnership between the different organizations. Councillor Bond, your comments.
Thanks. That's a great segue. I know I would be 100% supportive of an initiative like that, and partnering with the archives and the library for providing access to those kind of documents. I know it would personally save me a lot of time from having to go down to the city library to look at the microfiche for a certain issue, and then coming up to talk to the clerk about reports around a long-standing issue, or I think the archives website, or in person should it not be online. And I know especially with the severe decline in local community-based journalism that's happened over the past 10 or 15 years, the stories don't get told the way they did in the past. There would often be in the local newspaper quite in-depth articles with interviews and background research, and so there's a lot of that's missing now, and so it does kind of lean towards more on us in the public realm to tell those stories and provide that information for not just current residents, but future residents as well. And I'll echo all of the thank yous that my colleagues have said around the table. It has been a very challenging and increasingly rapid rate of change. I know COVID, as you mentioned, Jacqueline, has brought that about. And I know that the library board and all of your staff and executive have been really responding to that, and I think in a beyond a commending way. And so thank you for that. I'll just touch on 3 parts of the presentation that I found most important, in my time using the library before, during, and after COVID. The library being one of those places, if not maybe the only place in a lot of our communities where people can just be without having to pay a fee, right? There's so many places, even in Lynn Valley Center, where if you want to be yourself, if you want to work, if you just want a place to rest that's dry, or you've got time in between your errands or whatever you're doing during the day, the library is pretty much the only spot that you can go without having to buy a coffee or sit down at a restaurant or go shopping, right? And so I think that's a huge part, and I love the work that you've been doing in all your library spaces to support that and support more and more people using that space in that way. The other point I know, and this I don't know if we talked about it too much today or if it was mentioned too much in your presentation, but the library as that space and as a convener of conversations. I think we've talked about that before, Jacqueline, and I know now more than ever, with a lot of the polarizing opinions that have happened over the past 4 or 5 years, COVID's accelerated that a lot. Having that space that welcomes conversation and welcomes informing people, and having a place where people can get together and actually talk about stuff, right? And talk about difficult issues, or talk about nothing sometimes too, right? So that part of the library is also really important. And then also lend my full support behind the library of things concept. I know, I live in Sealand Town Center, looking very, very excited for the new library space that's going to be opening up in the community center there. And I know that if there was, a library things that had, tools or other things that you just use on an infrequent basis, I know that could be a huge benefit to a lot of people, especially in the town centers, people that have chosen to take less space and live in smaller spaces. That could be an amazing partnership between the municipality and the library, and perhaps some of the new private or semi-private spaces that might be developed there. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor. I think a tool library would be a great addition to the community. I had to buy a wrench the other day that I know I will not have to use for at least another 2 years. And it's frustrating when you dole out for something that's so infrequently used. It's something that we should be sharing where we can.
You
Councillor
should
Beck.
knock on the door of your neighbor and ask them if you can borrow a wrench.
Yes, and we do that. My neighbor has saved my bacon a few times on automotive projects. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask a question specific to the Story Lab. That's an example of where you took, I think it was a server room, right, at one point. And now that that's been up and running for a while, I was just wondering if you could comment on how it's being used, the types of projects that are being created there, that type of thing. Just a little bit of an update on that, because it's such a cool space.
Thanks, Jordan. Thank you, Councillor Back. It's tough when they've been on the board. And Councillor Back has actually performed in Story Lab, and it's become immortalized in a video in the archives. Yes, indeed. We've gotten a lot of different community projects in there. Certainly, we have the digital storyteller who used the space. We've had kids in there. We've had podcasts. A lot of podcasting is happening. There's 2 different studio spaces. One is more audio and the other is video. It's a larger space. So there's a variety of different uses there. Yeah, and so we've even had a few people just in there to practice their instruments. So just to have a soundproof room. So a lot of different uses, and it's still growing.
That's great. So it is getting a lot of use by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, if as a follow-up to this meeting, I will send a few links and documents to council, and I'll include a link to a video, a really lovely video that was created by the digital storyteller in residence about people who live in the district of North Vancouver. Some really great community stories there that would become part of that are part of our archive.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Curran, and just we'll note the time that we have about 10 minutes left until we have to be preparing for the 7 o'clock special meeting of council. Your comments, Councillor Curran?
I'll be quick. I just noticed that I think Suzanne and Megan are there. So hello, and thanks for all that you're doing. And just wanted to give a shout out to the communications that is coming out of the library, because I love how there's like the North Van teens, and like there's different ways to connect with different audiences. And I think that that's really special to going to where they are. I just was chatting with a young person in the community today who is again like, why aren't you on TikTok? I have 20,000 followers on TikTok. I'm like, okay. But I love that. I think that it's really tailored to different audiences, and I think that's really cool. And I know communications just won an award of some sort recently that was shared with us. So congratulations on that. And just, I think the community, the library staff looks after each other. And I think that really comes through. And I just wondered if anyone wants to speak to, I know Jacqueline, you're there. Just, I know I'm hearing from other frontline workers in the community that COVID has, and I think we kind of touched on this, like it has presented challenges in terms of people feeling safe in their environments as the masking mandates and different things like that. And that polarization that Councillor Bond spoke about impacts people in different ways when they are on the front lines of working with the public. And so is there anything more that, you know, we can do to create that sort of culture of care to make sure that people feel safe in their workplaces, and anything you want to share on that, or we can park that and bring it up at the next library board meeting. But I just wanted to acknowledge that people who are on front lines are experiencing this pandemic in very different ways, and then people who maybe get to work from home or different things. So just to acknowledge that. Again, happy to park it and bring it. It's a big subject.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. It's definitely been a challenging couple of years on that front, and our staff have been on the front lines and dealing with the public through all of that fear and anxiety. And and then add in the stabbing and some staffing assaults that happened by a member of the public. And I think staff sense of security is actually a little fragile right now, to be honest. We're working very closely with the OHS folks here at the municipality and also with NCEAM on active threat and with the RCMP and with WorkSafe BC. We are doing absolutely everything we can to support staff sense of safety and resilience. We've had a lot of training, a lot of de-escalation training, a lot of violence in the workplace training. We've got lockdown drills. There's kind of no end to this, and there's more to do. And we are just going ahead and doing it for everybody as much as we can. Not sure what else. I think Lynn Valley is a very different place than what it used to be maybe 5 years ago. It's feeling like much more of an urban library. Maybe it's the buses or something. It's to be really frank, it's a very different feel than it was. And I think it's starting to require perhaps a different response in terms of community and staff safety.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, no, I recognize that that was, last May, the incidents certainly galvanized our efforts to address security in the space, and the library was a key part of welcoming people back to that area and reclaiming that space for the public benefit. And so please, you have our appreciation on behalf of the council for all of the work you've done to make that space welcoming and bring the community back. Want to also, on behalf of the council, wish you all the best in the coming years and all of the work plan items that you have. You heard from council that you have a lot of fans here on the council that have a lot of ideas for your organization, but we want to just see your organization be central in our community and that we all support the goals of lifelong learners in our community, and library is a key part of that. So on behalf of the council, thank you very much. Mr. Mitchell, did you have a?
Yeah, I know we've not got a lot of time left, but there was just three quick things that I wanted to bring up in terms of feedback. One is, in the longer term, we're continuously looking ahead to the age of our facilities. Obviously, Capilano location being the oldest, and obviously that's not a location with immediate needs, but just make sure that's on your radar in terms of long-term infrastructure. The second point was just, as we've touched on today, and as we're hearing from other library locations around the province, the libraries are increasingly the last venue in communities that are open, to everyone. And I think as time goes on, it's increasingly going to be an issue with, that's where people go if they're having challenges, and that's not the original intention of libraries, and that's something that needs to be adapted. And then the last point was just, we're interested in the Breezeway at Lynn Valley Library, and if there's any plans for that space or anything on the longer term. So I guess that's, just leave that with that question.
Thank you very much. Yes, and we obviously will work closely with you on those matters. On behalf of the council, sorry, we have a vote on the floor, so it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. The delegation is received. On behalf of the council, thank you so much for the work you do in our community, and we look forward to partnering with you on projects going forward.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you too.
Council, this meeting, we have completed the business intended for this meeting. So if somebody will move adjournment, I'll accept. Moved by Councillor Bond, accepted. Thank you very much to members of the public and staff. We're going to be starting our special meeting of council on the Metro Vancouver 2050 plan in about 5 minutes time. So we're just going to have a bit of a leg stretch and we'll resume at 7. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Are we on this line?
This is the link for the 7 o'clock meeting. So if you want to shut off your